In a major move in America's fight against drug trafficking, the U.S. military has carried out its 20th strike on a suspected narcotics vessel, killing 4 people in international waters during Operation Southern Spear. This operation is part of a wider effort to stop illegal drugs from reaching U.S. shores and to disrupt dangerous criminal networks in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific. The strike raises questions about regional security, international law, and the human cost of such operations. Today we will break down what happened, why it matters, who is involved, and what this could mean for the future of U.S. military actions and regional stability. If you want clear updates, in-depth analysis, and detailed breakdowns of these developments, hit the subscribe button now and turn on notifications so you do not miss any of our future reports. Let us dive into the full story. In recent years, the United States has intensified its fight against drug trafficking across the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific. The campaign began as intelligence agencies noticed a sharp increase in shipments of illegal narcotics moving toward U.S. shores. Authorities were concerned that traditional enforcement methods were no longer sufficient to stop these operations, so the U.S. military stepped in to take a more direct role. This approach focuses on tracking and intercepting vessels suspected of carrying drugs before they reach coastal areas. The goal is to disrupt criminal networks at sea, reduce the flow of narcotics, and prevent violence linked to these operations from spilling into the United States. Operation Southern Spear was formally announced by U.S. Southern Command as a targeted military campaign to combat large-scale drug smuggling in international waters. Its stated objectives are to identify, intercept, and destroy vessels carrying illegal narcotics while using advanced technology and intelligence to minimize civilian risk. The operation relies on coordinated efforts between naval forces, aerial surveillance, and increasingly robotic and autonomous systems designed to track and monitor suspicious activity over vast ocean areas. Operation Southern Spear has been described as one of the most comprehensive maritime anti-narcotics initiatives in recent U.S. history. The campaign focuses primarily on the Caribbean Sea and the Eastern Pacific, regions that have long been key routes for narcotics moving from South and Central America toward the United States. These waters are used by traffickers to avoid detection and exploit gaps in regional enforcement. The operation has already seen at least 20 separate strikes on vessels identified as carrying illegal drugs, resulting in dozens of confirmed deaths. This scale of military action marks a significant escalation from previous efforts that were limited to boarding, seizures, and arrests. What makes this campaign different is the use of lethal force combined with modern technology. The U.S. military is now deploying robotic systems, unmanned vessels, and advanced naval assets to conduct operations more effectively and with greater precision. These tools allow the military to engage targets from a distance while reducing the risk to personnel. The combination of lethal action and technological innovation represents a new chapter in maritime anti-narcotics enforcement. The latest strike, the 20th under Operation Southern Spear, occurred in the Caribbean Sea and resulted in the deaths of 4 people aboard a suspected drug vessel. According to U.S. Southern Command, the vessel was on a known drug route and was actively carrying illegal narcotics. Intelligence indicated that it was part of a larger trafficking network. The vessel was located in international waters, which allowed U.S. forces to act under existing operational guidelines. Video footage released after the strike shows the vessel engulfed in flames as the operation was carried out. The engagement was authorized and directed by the Joint Task Force operating under the Southern Spear campaign. This task force coordinates naval and aerial units to ensure rapid response to intelligence reports and to maximize the effectiveness of each strike. The goal is to disrupt drug operations while maintaining as much oversight and control as possible. If you are finding this breakdown useful, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. This helps support detailed coverage like this and ensures you will not miss any future updates on Operation Southern Spear and related developments. The key players in Operation Southern Spear are a mix of U.S. military leaders, government officials, and regional actors. At the forefront is the United States military, supported by the Joint Task Force Southern Spear, which coordinates naval and aerial units to carry out the operations. U.S. Southern Command oversees the campaign, ensuring that intelligence and operational strategies are aligned. Key figures such as Pete Hegseth, the U.S. Secretary of Defense, have publicly emphasized the importance of these strikes in maintaining national security and combating the flow of illegal narcotics into the United States. These actors are working together to execute a complex campaign in challenging maritime environments. The targets of the operation are alleged narcotics trafficking networks, described by the U.S. as narco-terrorists. These groups are accused of moving large shipments of drugs from South and Central America toward U.S. markets. U.S. officials have also linked some of these networks to the Cartel de los Soles and claim there are connections to Nicolas Maduro's government in Venezuela. The intelligence points to sophisticated trafficking operations that use fast boats, hidden compartments, and remote maritime routes to evade authorities. These networks are considered highly dangerous and capable of coordinating across multiple countries, which is why the U.S. is taking aggressive measures against them. Regional governments are also key players, both directly and indirectly. Countries like Venezuela are accused of providing support to the traffickers, while Trinidad and Tobago and other Caribbean nations are often involved as nearby observers or training partners for anti-narcotics efforts. These governments are affected by the strikes and sometimes face political pressure as a result. International observers and human rights groups are monitoring the operations closely. They raise questions about the legality of U.S. actions in international waters and the potential impact on civilians. These concerns add a layer of scrutiny to the campaign and influence how the operations are communicated to the public. The motives behind Operation Southern Spear are rooted in U.S. national security and drug enforcement goals. The primary aim is to stop narcotics from entering the United States and to weaken organized crime networks that threaten public safety. Labeling certain cartels as terrorist organizations provides a legal framework for military intervention. The operation also signals a strong stance on protecting the homeland from illicit drug flows. The strategy combines traditional naval power with new technology. The U.S. has expanded its presence with carrier strike groups such as the USS Gerald R. Ford and is deploying robotic and autonomous systems to track and engage targets more effectively. These tools allow for rapid, precise strikes while reducing the risk to military personnel. The 20th strike marks a significant escalation in the campaign, showing the U.S. willingness to act decisively. It also sends a message to regional actors about the United States' posture in Latin America. Strategically, these operations have implications for international maritime law, regional diplomacy, and future drug trafficking routes, as traffickers are forced to adapt to a more aggressive and technologically advanced U.S. approach. The strikes carried out under Operation Southern Spear raise serious legal and ethical questions. Some experts ask whether these actions fully comply with international law and if proper due process was observed. Engaging a vessel in international waters is legally complex, and critics argue that lethal force should be a last resort. While U.S. officials assert that the operations target known criminal networks, there is limited public disclosure of the evidence supporting each strike. This gap between government claims and transparent proof fuels debate over accountability and the rule of law. There is also concern about potential civilian casualties and unintended damage. Although the strikes focus on specific vessels, the risk of harming non-combatants or nearby ships is always present. Human rights groups and regional organizations have voiced criticism, highlighting the need to balance aggressive enforcement with humanitarian considerations. Latin American governments have expressed unease as well. Some see the strikes as necessary to combat organized crime, while others worry about sovereignty and the precedent such operations set. International bodies are watching closely, which adds pressure for the United States to justify its actions and maintain credibility in global maritime operations. The impact of these strikes is already visible. Smuggling routes have been disrupted, and the deaths of suspected traffickers send a clear message to criminal networks that the U.S. is willing to take decisive action. In the region, responses have varied. The Venezuelan government condemned the operations, while other Caribbean nations and U.S. allies have expressed cautious support, acknowledging the need to stop the flow of illegal drugs. Domestically, the strikes have drawn attention from Congress, human rights organizations, and media outlets. Lawmakers question the legality and oversight of these actions, while advocacy groups push for greater transparency and accountability. Media coverage has focused on both the tactical success and the potential consequences of using military force in drug enforcement. Looking ahead, these operations could reshape drug trafficking strategies and regional alliances. Traffickers may shift routes, adopt new tactics, or increase secrecy to avoid detection. Meanwhile, countries in the Caribbean and Latin America may adjust their cooperation with U.S. forces based on how these strikes affect regional stability and diplomacy. The long-term consequences will depend on the balance between military effectiveness, legal compliance, and humanitarian considerations. Looking ahead, there are several things to watch in the coming months. The United States may carry out further strikes as intelligence identifies new vessels involved in narcotics trafficking. New assets, including advanced naval ships and robotic systems, could be deployed to strengthen the campaign. There is also the possibility of escalation toward Venezuela or other states if traffickers continue to use these areas as operational bases. Each action will be closely monitored by regional governments and international observers, which could influence how far the U.S. chooses to go in applying military pressure. Regional responses may vary. Some countries could increase cooperation with U.S. forces to combat trafficking, while others might resist or protest the strikes as violations of sovereignty. These differing reactions could change the dynamics of regional alliances and affect the long-term strategy of Operation Southern Spear. Meanwhile, cartels are likely to adapt quickly. They may shift their smuggling routes, use smaller vessels, or adopt more covert methods to evade detection. These adaptations will challenge U.S. forces and require continued innovation and intelligence to stay ahead. The broader implications for U.S. foreign policy in Latin America are significant. The use of military force in drug enforcement highlights the tension between security objectives and diplomatic relationships. Balancing these approaches is critical because aggressive military action can strengthen enforcement but may strain ties with regional partners. For the U.S. audience, these operations have direct relevance. Disrupting drug flows enhances homeland security and affects the national debate on how to handle organized crime and the drug crisis. In conclusion, the 20th strike under Operation Southern Spear marks an important moment in the ongoing effort to combat maritime drug trafficking. The operation demonstrates the United States' commitment to disrupting dangerous networks while also raising questions about legality, ethics, and regional relations. Balancing security, international norms, and diplomatic concerns is a complex challenge that will shape the future of this campaign. This strike signals that the U.S. is willing to act decisively and use advanced technology to address threats at sea, while also navigating the broader consequences for international law and regional diplomacy. If you found this video useful, do not forget to hit like, share it with your network, and subscribe for regular in-depth updates. Staying informed about these developments helps you understand both the immediate impact and the long-term implications of Operation Southern Spear.